More than a dozen Marines are in custody today after being charged with human smuggling and drug charges. The 16 Marines were arrested Thursday at Camp Pendleton in Southern California, about 55 miles from the Mexico border.
Some of them are accused of helping undocumented migrants cross the border. At least 8 others are being questioned about unrelated drug offenses.
It's a shock to the system.
Thursday's arrest of 16 Marines occurred in dramatic fashion in front of their own entire unit.
The release of this information was really so we could be completely transparent about what happened today. It was a very large arrest.
The Marines were made to line up in morning formation, like this one the Marine Corps filmed earlier at California's Camp Pendleton. They were then arrested for offenses that range from human smuggling to drug-related activities. All 16 suspects are members of the oldest active duty Marine division, headquartered here just 60 miles north of the Mexican border. None of the Marines were among the 6,600 active duty and National Guard troops assigned to bolster border patrol at the southwestern border. The Marines say Thursday's arrest stemmed from an earlier arrest of 2 more Camp Pendleton Marines near the Mexican border in early July. The pair were pulled over with 3 undocumented immigrants in their back seat and charged with human smuggling. Both have pleaded not guilty. According to authorities, the undocumented immigrants said they agreed to pay the Marines $8,000. The Marines said it was not their first time doing this, and Border Patrol expanded the investigation, which led to Thursday's arrests.
If they are in fact found guilty of those crimes, then they'll be held appropriately accountable for that.
In a separate case on the 4th of July, an entire platoon of 22 elite Navy SEALs in Iraq allegedly held a drunken party. That not only violates regulations against consuming alcohol in Iraq, but there have also been allegations of sexual assault.
So Jamie Yukas is at Camp Pendleton now, joins us. So the Marines were arrested, Jamie, during roll call. That means in front of all of their other fellow Marines. Do we know why it happened that way?
Well, there's some speculation as to why that would happen, and it kind of makes sense if you think about it. You have everybody lined up in a room, as you saw in the video that we just showed you, and instead of being able to go in and question one person at a time, maybe then word gets out to some of the other Marines that they're being questioned, and then you don't get everybody at once. This was a way to get everybody in the same room, take everybody at one time, and arrest them at the same time. The other thing is it does send a message to other Marines that if they're involved in any type of illegal activity, that people are watching them and that they could be next.
Jamie, one of the things that I've read in your reporting and elsewhere is when we think about human smuggling, I think there's oftentimes people think of people in crates or in huge vans and 18-wheelers that are migrants that are, trying to get across the border.
It's like 15 people at a time or something.
Right, and from some of the reporting that I've seen, Jamie, suggests that some of these Marines, whilst it is still human smuggling, may have just gone across the border, picked up a couple of people, and driven them into the United States, dropped them off, and collected their money.
Well, right, as you heard, Camp Pendleton is only about 60 miles north of the Mexican border. So what it sounds like is that they would take their vehicles and drive and then pick up these illegal migrants and bring them across the border, undocumented migrants, across the border just about 7 miles north of the U.S.-Mexico border and then drop them off. And what we learned in those court documents is that these migrants were paying about $8,000 to them to come across the border. So, yeah, it sounds like it was just kind of 1, 2, 3, maybe at a time within their own vehicle that they were using to transport back and forth. If you think about it, that doesn't attract as much attention as you're going back and forth across the border. But somehow back earlier this month, around July the 3rd, 2 Marines were picked up for the same thing. So you now have 18 total Marines from here at Camp Pendleton who were caught all doing supposedly the same thing, bringing these undocumented migrants across the border.
So we know that the Department of Homeland Security has actually been using Marines to sort of help at the southern border. Any of the Marines that were arrested, were they also working at the border?
That's been a question that many people asked, and right away I will tell you that the military came out and said no, they are not part of that unit that went down to the southwest border to protect the border. And what we should tell you is that when the military is involved in those actions, specifically the Marine units here, they're doing things like putting up fencing and some of the other ways to keep people out, but they're not actually, in touch with any of the undocumented migrants or illegal migrants at the border anyway. So it sounds like that they were not part of that unit, but still, this is very troubling, of course, to the military that this would happen.
So this is a military case. What are we hearing about how it will proceed, Jamie?
Well, so they are in the brig, as we reported earlier, the 16. And a brig is, I should say, a military prison, if people aren't familiar with the term. So they are being held here in a military prison. But we have not been told yet if they will be tried in military court. They could also be tried in federal court. So we will probably learn that later on as more documents come out in the next couple of days. But right now, the preliminary documents were released and they are being held here. So the assumption is that they will be tried in military court.
All right, Jamie Yukas. Thank you very much, Jamie.